So when we're talking about our toolkits or our beading kits, generally when students come into the program, they have one large toolkit. But the essentials that you have in there are very important, and these will just make your beading so much easier. One of the first things I always suggest that having a good supply of thread. So whatever thread that you're going to do or whatever size of beads that you're going to be using, you should have a really good supply of beading thread. Beading needles. I can't say more than you need lots of them. One of the things too is that they're very thin, fine needles, so what can happen is you can end up breaking them very easily. So I always suggest a good package of needles is what you need to get. If you have a 10, 12, and a 14, that will basically carry you through all the bead sizes. The next things that you need are good scissors. You need really good embroidery scissors or thread scissors. You need them to be really sharp because you want to keep a clean line on your beading thread, especially if you're going to be rethreading your needle quite often. You want to make sure that the end is clean and it's not frayed. So anytime you have to start like this to your thread, you know it's going to have a frayed end. You want to have just one smooth cut. So depending on what sort of scissors you like to use, it's entirely up to you. I have different styles. So there's this style. These work pretty good, but you have to get used to working with them because you have to sort of squeeze them together in order to work. For myself, I like to have a good number of different markers. I have air erase, and I have water erasable, and I have a chalk marker. Very rarely do I use any other type of markers. The type of work that I'm going to do will determine the marker that I'm going to use, and also the type of background fabric I'm going to use will determine it. My ultimate favorite is a chalk marker. It will mark on anything and it comes off. When you're doing beadwork, you need to make sure that you use beeswax on your thread. Beeswax has a couple of purposes, and the purposes are, one, it strengthens your thread. So you just run your thread through you can see the little marks on my beeswax. You run your thread through there, it puts just a coating on it, adds a little bit of strength to it. It also helps to prevent tangling. It doesn't eliminate it, but it will help prevent it. Let's see. Oh, a lighter. This is the lighter that you keep in your beading pack and you hide it from everybody because sometimes we need to burn the knots. We also have tweezers. It doesn't matter what type of tweezers that you have. These are what they call splinter tweezers. They've got a very pointy end. I really like these because these allow me to dig underneath my beadwork. One of my favorite little tools, I don't use it lots, but it is one of my favorite little tools, and that's a crochet hook. A crochet hook, probably one of the best things to beadwork since sliced bread. Even though you don't use it very often, anybody that's done beadwork and they've cut their thread too short, or an accident's happened, you've gone in and fixed it, and you can't tie the knot because the threads are too short, crochet hook, it works the best. One of the other things you want to have in your toolkit, I know it sounds a little bit crazy, but a nail file. A nail file serves two purposes. One, if you get little snags in your fingernails, you need to file them out because what will happen is those snags will grab onto your beading thread, which will fray them, cause a big, ugly, nasty mess that you're trying to fix. So always file them out. I find it works really well, especially if I get little calluses on my fingers that tend to snag the threads. I'll file my skin as well. Where else we use them is when we work with bugle beads. If you find that if anybody's worked with bugle beads, they'll know they'll come across one or two every so often that you go to thread it and it cuts your thread. Well, all you do is you take the bugle bead, run it on your nail file, and it'll actually smooth out those sharp edges of your bugle beads. So two purposes for your file. Keep your thread from snagging and smooth out those rough edges of your bugle beads.